And this one is the one, being accountable and making sure that you're holding your teams, yourself, and others accountable is another thing that the hiring manager is in a great position to do. Setting goals and making sure those goals are aligned from the top of the company leadership to the frontline recruiter to the individual contributor, making sure that there's alignment. So if your goal is to increase the number of women in an organization as a company, then the hiring manager wants to make sure that they're allocating the resources and the budget to get that, to achieve that goal, so that the recruiters can go to those events, or the hiring manager can go to an event, or you can have an open house. And you want to make sure that the training, maybe there's training that needs to happen with the interview team. All of those steps go to aligning to that goal of increasing the representation. And make it personal. As a leader, being accountable means making it personal and being personally aware of what the desired outcome is and owning that. And get your teams to learn how to screen in and not screen out. A lot of times you're trying to screen people out like, hey, they're not good enough to work here. Well, if you change that mindset, it's going to allow you to bring more people in, because you're looking for the good in the person and their capabilities and the values that they're bringing to the table, and not necessarily trying to screen them out.
Cody?
Yeah, Jeff.
Can you give a specific example of when you see a company screening out? What exactly is happening in that process?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And a lot of times the companies don't even know they're doing this. I work with a company that has been they've been around for over 40 years. They are trying to hire and increase more diversity in their executive leadership for the first bench level leadership role. But there's a profile that they're looking for, because all the current executives came from a particular school with a particular GPA and had specific things that they did in college, whether it's 5 years ago or 15 years ago, that the company, if these people don't have those things, then they're screening them out and not even giving them a chance to interview, or giving them a chance to demonstrate the success that they've had. And so screening out just means they're looking for a reason to say no, and it's up to the candidate to give the company a reason to say yes, which is, it's subtle, but it's when that mindset exists, it has a huge impact on your ability to bring in talent that's different from the talent you already have. And so that screening out thing really is really closely connected to the culture fit question, and getting more open-minded and looking for ways to find the good things that the person brings to the table will allow companies to do a better job of increasing their diversity hiring.
How can you overcome that from a skills perspective or an experience perspective? So you mentioned being an African-American in an IT environment, and obviously you may have been the only person there. So you were the only one getting experience. So anybody else that was there wouldn't have the same experience that you do, because you filled a role for a longer period of time, or maybe you had different skill sets. So how do you prevent from screening out based on those two things?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So a lot of times, and this goes back to the job requirements. What are the basic requirements for this job? People don't get experience until they have an opportunity to do a job. And because I had lots of experience doing a lot of different things, because someone gave me a chance, I was fortunate that the Navy put me in positions that I was not qualified for, but I learned how to do it. So I got that level of experience. So when I came out of the Navy, I was pretty well positioned to take on a job that required lots of the requirements, but I had a lot of the nice to haves. And so stepping into the company, there wasn't anyone else like me who had that same background. Now we hired people, and some of those people had the same skills, but they also had similar backgrounds to mine. So even in that scenario, we were bringing in a profile of a person who came in ex-military, ex-technical military person coming into the company. But we had already taken a chance on hiring like someone like me, and someone, I'm sure someone before me had a similar background. Where the risk comes for the company is hiring someone who doesn't fit that profile and just hiring them on the requirements for the job, and can they grow into the other nice to haves that the job is asking them to do.
So in this tight job market, is the employer, doesn't the employer need to focus on what skills they may be willing to train so that they're not necessarily screening out so many people, because there's not as many candidates to choose from that say there were 5 years ago?
Yeah, here's where the hiring managers have to come in and be decisive, take a stand, taking it personally, and taking some risk, right? The hiring manager is the person who's ultimately going to talk with the recruiting team about what they're willing to do. And so if the hiring managers start with the idea that we can teach some of the skill, and we're starting to see more of this where companies are saying, look, we need to hire people who have these values and these attributes. We can teach the skill because we want them to learn to do it the way our company does it and not the way they did it in other companies. So we are starting to see more of that. There's still a big challenge with especially mid-level and more senior level roles where they're just hiring based on experience and based on culture. You know, consulting is a company that is an organization and an industry where if you have not been a client-facing consultant, knowing how to grow accounts and communicate and do all the things that are necessary to manage through that customer, it's tough to get in at a more senior level in a consulting firm because that's important. But at the lower level, if you've got certain qualities and you've demonstrated certain experience, then you can get into the organization and they think they can teach you some basic things. But it's still a big challenge because one of the challenges is that profile, right? That culture fit profile that people have. We haven't gotten past that as well as we probably should. So one of the last thing on this slide is to make decisions. I don't want to downplay this. As a manager, you're in a position to make decisions. Your leader is not holding you back as the manager, and they're just looking for someone to take charge, own something, and make that decision. So having that confidence and that courage as a manager to take an issue forward, demonstrate some risk, and show a commitment to diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging is something that will get a manager far in the organization. There's risk, there's always risk involved, but having that courage to make decisions. And sometimes a manager has to make a decision. You may interview a candidate and the team says, I'm a soft hire, or I'm a no hire, or I'd hire him if we don't find somebody better. Sometimes that decision falls on the shoulders of the manager. And here's where courage and decision making comes in as the manager, because you may see something in that candidate that the other interviewers didn't see. So making the case and making the decision.